Monique Adams pulled up to the restaurant just as the sun dipped low in the sky. Warm light filtered through the tall windows, casting soft shadows across the sidewalk. She stepped out of her car, smoothing the crisp lines of her dark blazer, and straightening her high-quality silk scarf. Tonight was special. It marked 10 years since she founded Innovetic, the company she built from scratch in her cramped apartment. She had worked all hours, faced tough breaks, and never lost hope. Now she was CEO of a thriving business, and she wanted to celebrate with the people who had helped her reach this point. As she approached the entrance, she felt her heart beat faster. She could already hear laughter from inside soft music, blending with happy voices bouncing off polished walls. Monique held her head high and smiled at the hostess station. She had a reservation under her maiden name, Adams. She even had the printed confirmation on her phone ready to show. She thought, I will let my success shine. She was proud of everything she had built, and she wanted her team to share in that pride. The hostess greeted her with a tight smile. Monique said, Good evening. I have a reservation for Monique Adams at 8 o'clock. The hostess typed into a small tablet, but her eyes flicked past Monique's face as if the name did not match the woman standing there. Monique felt a small knot of unease, but she stayed calm. She thought perhaps the hostess was tired or distracted. Let me check again, the hostess said, flipping through digital pages as if scrolling through names on a long list. Her fingers hovered over the screen, but no match appeared. Monique watched the hostess hesitate and then look up, her expression guarded. I'm sorry, but we don't show a reservation under that name, she said. Monique opened her purse and pulled out her phone. She found her confirmation email and pressed play on the screen. The hostess leaned close and read aloud, Adams. Yes, we see it now, but it says reservation is for 5 people, correct? Monique nodded. It's actually for 10, she said softly. I confirmed this morning. The email shows 10 names. The hostess tapped her tablet again. Her skin grew pale and her voice trembled just a bit. I'm so sorry, ma'am. There's a note here asking us to seat you at the bar only. We're fully booked at the tables. Monique felt warmth rise inside her chest. She had spent weeks planning this celebration, the invitations, the catering menu, the speeches. Now it felt as if someone had erased all her careful work. She squared her shoulders and replied, May I please sit at my reserved table? I invited my whole team, and we planned an event. She spoke slowly, each word steady. The hostess shook her head. I really can't change that note, she said. She offered a polite smile, but Monique saw something cold in her eyes. She saw how the hostess looked around, wondering if anyone else was watching this exchange. Monique felt a sting of shame, even though she knew she had done nothing wrong. She stood in her elegant outfit, feeling exposed and small. A moment later, a man in a white shirt and a dark vest appeared behind the hostess. He looked at Monique and said in a clipped tone, Ma'am, you can't be seated here. This is 4. Bar service only after 8. I'm afraid you'll have to leave. He glanced at Monique's phone held out before her and rolled his eyes. You're welcome to wait by the door until a spot opens at the bar. Monique's mind raced. She pictured her friends and colleagues arriving soon, expecting to be greeted and seated. She pictured her mentor, an older woman who believed in her from day one, coming to toast her achievements. Everything felt crushed in a single instant. Out. But she refused to raise her voice or cry. She had faced far worse on her path to CEO, long hours in a cubicle, investors who laughed at her ideas, entire meetings where she had to fight to be heard. This was another challenge, and she would meet it with grace. She pressed her lips together, nodded to the manager, and said quietly, Thank you for your help. I will step outside to call my team. She turned on her heel and walked out into the cool evening air. Ah! Her breath came in steady intervals as she crossed the threshold, leaving. The laughter behind, and stepping into silence. Outside, the city noise felt louder. Cars whizzed by, horns honked, and distant music played from passing cars. Monique took a deep breath and lifted her chin. She refused to let this moment define her. She found a bench near the entrance and sat down, pulling out her phone. She tapped her team chat and typed a calm message. Hello, everyone. I need a moment. Please bear with me. She deleted it, then started again. Team, I'm sorting out a small issue. Please meet me across the street in 5 minutes. Sorry for the change. She locked her phone and leaned back, closing her eyes for a moment. Memories of her early days flashed through her mind, renting a shared office space. Late nights coding prototypes, the empty refrigerator when she had spent too much on ads. She remembered her mother's voice saying, "Keep going, honey. Work matters." She opened her eyes and thought of every person who had cheered her on. They would understand. Monique stood up, smoothed her skirt, and checked her reflection in the glass door. Her hair fell in neat waves around her shoulders, her makeup was perfect, and her posture was strong. She was still the woman she had been when she arrived, talented, powerful, and worthy. She walked down the steps of the restaurant and crossed the street to the small cafe that served coffee and sandwiches. It was empty now, but she knew they served pastries too. She stepped inside. The cafe manager greeted her by name and waved. At a high table near the window, her team began to filter in, confused but curious. They hugged her and sat down. Monique explained what had happened, keeping her voice calm. She told them how she had been turned away from a place she had booked. Months ago, she did not shout or cry. She spoke with clear eyes and even tone. Her team listened in silence, shock on their faces. Then a young colleague said, "This is not right, Monique. You've built this company with your vision." Another added, "We should do something about that restaurant." Monique smiled at them, proud of their loyalty. She said, "Thank you. We will do something that shows our values." She tapped her phone to draft a plan. She would find a way to turn this moment into a lesson about respect and inclusion. As the bright lights of the restaurant glowed in the night behind them, Monique felt a spark of determination. This was not the end of her story here. It was the beginning of something bigger. She would show that success was not just about profit, margins, but about standing up with dignity, even when others tried to push you aside. She would walk away first, and then she would write the next chapter. Tonight's setback would not defeat her, it would guide her. And her team would be with her every step of the way. Monique and her team sat in the small cafe across the street, the soft hum of conversation and the clink of cups around them. Outside the window, the restaurant's lights glowed warmly against the dark sky. Monique looked around at each face, eager, concerned, loyal, and felt their energy strengthen her. She took a steadying breath and tapped her phone. She scrolled back to the email confirmation from the restaurant, the one that clearly showed her name, date, time, and guest count. Then she put the phone down and met her team's eyes. "I want you all to hear exactly what happened," she said. Her voice was calm, but her shoulders braced as if holding back a storm. "I gave the hostess my confirmation." She said she didn't see it. "Then the manager came and told me I wasn't allowed in. He said I could only sit at the bar, even though I had paid to reserve a table for 10. She paused, letting the words sink in. Her colleagues exchanged looks of disbelief. Monique continued, "I tried to explain, even showed him the email, but he refused. He actually walked me toward the door." A hush fell over the table. The waiter refilled their coffee cups, not quite knowing what to say. Monique leaned forward. "I did not shout. I did not cry. I did not insult anyone. I simply walked out." She let that fact settle. But walking out isn't enough. If I stay silent, it lets this kind of behavior continue. One of her team members, Sarah, spoke up. "Monique, I'm so sorry you had to go through that. It's wrong." Sarah's voice trembled, but only for a moment. Monique gave her a small, grateful nod. "Thank you, Sarah. It is wrong. It's not just about me. It's about any of us being treated unfairly." Monique stood and walked to the window. She placed her palm against the glass, looking into the restaurant as if seeing it for the first time. She could picture the polished floor, the neatly set tables, and the people inside enjoying their meals. None of them suspected the drama that had unfolded at the entrance. She turned back to her team. "I need your help to plan what comes next." She tapped her phone and opened a blank note. First, she said, "I will post a clear, factual account on my social media. Only the facts. No anger, no insults. Just exactly what happened with screenshots of the confirmation email," she wrote as she spoke. "Second, I want to invite the restaurant owner or manager to meet privately. I don't want a public fight. I want a real conversation. Her colleague Jamal raised his hand. Monique, are you sure you want to do this privately? Why not? Go big on social media first. He tapped at his own phone. We could go viral. Monique smiled gently. Going viral is easy. It's also easy to get lost in noise. I want this to be about respect and understanding. I want to change their policy, not just shame them. She typed quickly and then put the phone away. The group discussed details, what hashtags to use, how to phrase the invitation to the restaurant, the timing of each step. Monique guided them to keep the tone professional, firm, and solutions-focused. After 20 minutes, they had a draft. Post, a plan for reaching out, and a list of media contacts to notify if the restaurant refused to engage. Monique glanced at her watch. It was nearing noon. She closed her laptop. Okay, team. Let's take a break. I want everyone back here at 3. We'll finalize the message and send it. They nodded, all of them energized by the task. They left one by one, stepping out into the busy street, leaving Monique alone in the quiet cafe. She pulled out her phone again and stared at the email confirmation. The restaurant's name was clearly printed at the top, along with the date and time. Below, her reservation was definitely for 10 guests. She smiled ruefully. It seemed almost unbelievable that a place of business could ignore that level of proof. Yet it had happened. A memory flashed into her mind, her first pitch to investors. She had walked into a room full of older men in suits, her hands trembling as she unfurled her prototype. They had raised eyebrows at a young black woman with big ideas. But she had answered every question, overcome every doubt, and walked out with a commitment for seed funding. That had been one way she showed them her worth. Today, she would do the same. At 3 o'clock sharp, Monique's team gathered again. They sat in a circle around her, laptops open, eyes focused. Monique read aloud the draft of her social media post yesterday, June 9th. I arrived at Restaurant Looks with a confirmed reservation for a table of 10 under the name Monique Adams. Despite providing confirmation, I was told there was no reservation, then informed I could only sit at the bar. When I showed the email again, the manager still refused and escorted me out. I left calmly. At Innovetic, we stand for fairness and respect for all. I invite Restaurant Looks' leadership to meet with me one-on-one to understand what happened and to chart a path forward so no one else faces this situation. They talked through each sentence. Was the date clear? Did it sound too harsh? Should she mention escorted out or just asked to leave? They settled on words that were firm but not inflammatory. They added the restaurant's handle and a neutral hashtag, #Fair Treatment Matters. Next came the invitation. They drafted an email to the owner. Dear Ms. Carter, I hope this note finds you well. I am Monique Adams, CEO of Innovetic. Yesterday evening, I experienced an unfortunate incident at Restaurant Looks regarding my reservation. I believe there is mutual interest in clarifying what happened and preventing similar situations. I would welcome the opportunity to meet with you at your convenience to discuss this in person. Please let me know a suitable time. Thank you for your attention. Best regards, Monique Adams. They reviewed it, then sent it to the owner's known email address. Monique breathed out. She felt a weight lift from her chest. The facts were out there. The invitation was made. As the hours passed, Monique returned to her office. She walked through the open plan workspace, greeting employees and checking in on progress. She saw her team working on the next product rollout, coding new features, writing blog posts. Innovatech was moving forward even as this other story unfolded. She realized how far she had come from that first cramped apartment office. She had built more than a company. She had built a community of people who believed in fair treatment and mutual respect. At 6 o'clock, Monique's phone pinged with a reply from Ms. Carter, the restaurant owner. The email read, Ms. Adams, thank you for reaching out. I am deeply sorry that you experienced this issue at our restaurant. I take this matter seriously. I would like to meet with you tomorrow. At 10 a.m., my office is available. Please let me know if that works. Sincerely, Evelyn Carter. Monique allowed herself a small smile. She forwarded the email to her team with a short note, "Meeting confirmed. Let's prepare." She closed her laptop and stepped outside. The evening air was cool, and the city lights glowed. Monique felt calm. She had turned an uncomfortable situation into an opportunity for dialogue. She had set a clear, respectful tone. Now she would follow through, walking down the street. She thought of the broader impact. This incident wasn't unique. Too many businesses overlooked courtesy and respect, especially toward people they presumed didn't belong. Monique wanted to show that one person's measured response could spark real change. She wanted Restaurant Looks to improve its training and policies, and she wanted the world to see that dignity and calm resolve often speak louder than anger. That night, Monique slept with her phone by her side. She reviewed tomorrow's schedule in her mind. She planned her talking points and practiced a few key phrases: fair treatment, clear communication, mutual respect. She reminded herself to listen as much as she spoke. After all, this meeting was about understanding what had gone wrong and preventing it in the future. As she drifted to sleep, she pictured the cafe across the street, her team united, and the restaurants. Entrance waiting for her tomorrow. She felt prepared. She felt steady, and she felt ready to turn a humiliating incident into a moment of progress for herself, for Restaurant Looks, and for anyone who had ever been dismissed or ignored. This was another test of her leadership, and she was determined to pass it with grace. Monique woke early the next morning, sunlight filtering through her bedroom window. She reached for her phone and saw the notifications already stacking up. Her social media post was live, a clear account of what happened at Restaurant Looks. With screenshots of her email confirmation attached, she read the words one last time before turning off her alarm. Then she dressed in a simple but sharp suit, white blouse, navy skirt tanned, headed to her home office. As she entered the room, her assistant Leo was already waiting. He handed her a cup of coffee and pointed to the laptop screen. Monique sat at the desk and clicked through the first comments. Their tone was overwhelmingly supportive. Old friends, colleagues, even strangers were writing things like, "This is so unfair. Thank you for handling this with such dignity, and we stand with you." Local reporters had picked up the story overnight. One news outlet had written a short article with Monique's side of the story. Another tech blog ran a feature about how CEOs face bias even after great success. Monique felt a mixture of relief and cautious optimism. She knew social media could turn fast, but right now the conversation was respectful. She turned to Leo. "Please compile all the press mentions and social media reactions," she said. "I want a clear picture before our meeting." As she sipped her coffee, she reflected on how differently this morning was unfolding compared to last night's humiliation. Then she focused on what she needed to do next. Reach out directly to the restaurant's leadership and show them she meant to build a solution. By 9:30, Monique and two members of her communications team gathered in the conference room at Innovetech headquarters. They had charts of social media engagement, printouts of news mentions, and a draft script for speaking points. The room hummed with energy. She looked at each person and turned Jamal, her PR lead, Sarah, her legal advisor, and Leo handling logistics. Monique began by thanking them for their swift work and reminded them of their shared goal: to turn this setback into an opportunity for understanding. She dimmed the lights. It's good. And clicked to display the timeline they had created. It showed the Monday evening incident, the social media post at 9 a.m. Tuesday, and the expected meeting time with Restaurant Looks' owner at 10 a.m. Wednesday. Then came a new item, a small pop-up event scheduled for 5 p.m. Tuesday across the street from the restaurant. Monique explained that she wanted to demonstrate her values in a positive way. "We will host a brief gathering, just coffee and pastries, for anyone who believes in fair treatment. It's a way to show solidarity and to keep the focus on community, not confrontation." Jamal nodded and asked, "Do we have permits for that space?" Monique smiled. "Yes, I reserved the little kiosk beside the street lamp. It's part of our community outreach program. We've done charity pop-ups there before." Sarah pointed out they needed to coordinate with the city and ensure it looked friendly, not confrontational. Leo said he'd handle the signs. Will. Keep them neutral. Everyone deserves respect. No mention of the restaurant by name. Monique agreed. Let's keep the tone hopeful. I don't want to shame anyone. I want to invite people to stand with us. The team worked quickly. They laid out final details. Who would staff the kiosk? How to brew coffee? Where to place donation jars for a local nonprofit that supports entrepreneurship among underrepresented groups? Monique suggested they wear innovative shirts, not suits, to look approachable. They settled on light blue shirts that matched her company's colors. By noon, the plan was set. Monique took a moment to record a short video message to post online. She stood beside her car in a busy street, looked into the camera and said, "Today at 5 p.m., we're gathering at the corner of Elm and Main to celebrate fairness and community. If you believe everyone deserves respect, please join us." She ended with a warm smile and posted it all day. She focused on her regular work meetings with investors, a product demo for potential clients, reviews of new code features. But at the same time, she glanced at her phone, watching the pop-up event announcement roll through her networks. By mid-afternoon, she saw people saying they planned to come. Some were local restaurant workers. Others were small business owners who had also faced bias. Monique felt pride swelling in her chest. This was more than a statement. It was building a living, breathing show of support. At 4:45, Monique and 3 team members arrived at the kiosk. They set up a simple table, poured coffee into white cups, and placed fresh pastries on a tray. Small sign read, "Coffee in Community. Everyone deserves respect." The corner bustled with evening traffic. Curious neighbors slowed down, read the sign, and approached. Monique welcomed each person with eye contact and a gentle hello. She handed out coffee and listened as people shared stories of times they felt ignored, of moments they stood up for themselves, of hope that change was coming. One woman, a server at another downtown restaurant, told Monique how she once overheard colleagues make rude jokes about certain customers. She had spoken up and was praised for it later. Another man, a delivery driver, said he regretted not speaking out when his boss made a discriminatory remark. He thanked Monique for this public act of positivity. Monique realized that the kiosk had become more than an event. It was a safe space for honest conversation. She jotted notes in her notebook. These stories would guide her dialogue with restaurant. Lux's owner tomorrow. As the sun dipped lower, police officers on foot patrol waved and nodded approval. They had been notified of the event and assured it was peaceful. Monique thanked them. At 5:30, the pop-up concluded. People lingered, hugged each other, and some posted selfies online with the sign in the background, which Monique felt a deep sense of accomplishment. This was the kind of leadership she believed in: calm action, clear purpose, and real community engagement. She and her team packed up and walked across the street to Restaurant Lux. The glowing windows showed diners unaware of the day's events just outside. Monique looked up at the building and thought of the meeting tomorrow. She felt ready. She had shown support from her network, shared stories of others, and demonstrated her values in action. She knew Ms. Carter would see that she was not there to punish, but to partner. Back at home, Monique reviewed her notes one last time before bed. She organized the stories collected at the pop-up and highlighted key points about respect, communication, and policy. She drafted a short outline for tomorrow's meeting. Start with her own experience, and share the stories of community members, and finally propose concrete step staff training, clear reservation procedures, and an apology published on their website. She set her alarm and closed her laptop as she lay in bed. Reflected on how quickly a single act of calm resolve had grown into something meaningful. Yesterday's pain had blossomed into today's progress. She thought of her team working late, of the strangers' stories in the street, and of the upcoming chance to talk in person with Restaurant Lux's owner. She felt grounded, peaceful, and hopeful. Tomorrow would test her once more, but she knew she had built a bridge of understanding, and she intended to walk across it. Monique woke before dawn, her mind already running through the day ahead. This was the moment she had prepared for. The meeting with Restaurant Lux's owner, Ms. Evelyn Carter. She dressed in a smart but approachable outfit, a light gray pantsuit with a soft pastel blouse. She reminded herself to listen as much as speak. She wanted a true conversation, not a confrontation. Arriving at the restaurant just before 10, Monique paused on the sidewalk, looking up at the towering glass windows. Inside, diners were seated, unaware of the discussions to come in the back office. She took a deep breath and stepped through the front door. The hostess at the entrance looked up when she saw Monique, recognition flashing in her eyes. Monique gave a small, polite nod, but did not linger. She headed to a narrow hallway marked private and touched the door handle. On the other side, Miss Carter rose from behind a polished wooden desk. She was a woman in her 50s with silver-streaked hair and a careful posture that spoke of years managing luxury spaces. She smiled hesitantly. "Ms. Adams, thank you for coming," she said. Her voice was warm but measured, as if she wanted to convey both respect and authority. Monique returned the smile. "Thank you for meeting with me," she replied. She stepped inside and took in the room, a modest space with a round table, 2 comfortable chairs, and a window overlooking the kitchen entrance. It was not a grand boardroom, but it felt intimate enough for an honest talk. They sat down facing each other. For a moment, they simply looked at one another, 2 women from different worlds finding common ground. Monique opened her notebook and placed it on the table, but did not reach for it. Instead, she leaned forward and began, "Miss Carter, I want to start by saying I appreciate you making time today," Monique said. "Yesterday evening, I arrived with a confirmed reservation under my name for 10 people. Despite showing the confirmation email, I was told there was no reservation and that I could only sit at the bar. Even after I explained, I was escorted out." She paused and looked into Ms. Carter's eyes. That treatment hurt, and it reflected a larger issue of respect and inclusion. Ms. Carter nodded slowly. "I am very sorry you experienced that," she said. "I've already spoken with my manager and the hostess. I will say nothing excuses what happened. We value all our guests equally. Want to understand exactly where the breakdown was?" Monique placed her phone on the table and turned it toward Ms. Carter. The screen displayed the email confirmation, date, time, guest count, and the restaurant's letterhead. "This is the confirmation I showed them," Monique said. "It's clear, and it should have never been ignored." Ms. Carter studied the email, her brow creasing. "This is undeniable," she said quietly. She looked up. "I apologize again. This is my fault as much as theirs. I take full responsibility." Her voice softened. "I want to know why they acted this way. Was it an honest mistake or something else?" Monique nodded. She had expected this question and was ready. "Believe it was a mix of both. It may have been a simple error in their system, but when they saw me, a black woman dressed in business attire, they made assumptions. They assumed I didn't belong at that table." She spoke without anger, but each word carried weight. "Bias can be subtle, but its impact is real." Ms. Carter closed her eyes for a moment and let out a breath. "I'm learning through you how blind we can be to our own blind spots." She opened her eyes again. "I want to fix that. What do you suggest?" Monique reached into her notebook and opened to the page-headed proposal. She slid it across the table. Ms. Carter picked it up and read silently. A formal apology to be published on the restaurant's website and social media, acknowledging the mistake and committing to change. Mandatory bias awareness training for all staff, led by a certified expert. A clear digital reservation system update to flag and honor confirmed bookings. A partnership with Innovatech to host quarterly events celebrating diversity and inclusion. Donation to a nonprofit supporting minority entrepreneurs. The restaurant's name, Ms. Carter looked up, her eyes thoughtful. "This is concrete? I like that. The apology and training makes sense. We already have a digital system, but it clearly failed. I'll have my tech team revise it and add a manual double-check for large groups. And I'd be honored to partner with Innovatech on events." She tapped the paper. "The donation idea is generous. It shows people we're serious. Monique allowed herself a small smile of relief. They were aligned on the steps needed to move forward. "Thank you," she said. "I'm glad to see you're open to these changes. If we do this well, it will show everyone that even mistakes can become opportunities for growth." They spent the next hour refining the proposal. Miss Carter asked questions, took notes, and shared memories of her own early days as a restaurant owner, when she had to prove herself in a male-dominated industry. Monique listened and nodded, realizing their experiences had more in common than she first thought. Both had worked hard to build respect and success in fields where they sometimes felt like outsiders. After they finalized the plan, Miss Carter stood and held out her hand. "Ms. Adams, I am deeply grateful for your thoughtful approach. You have taught me a lot today." Monique stood and took the hand gratefully. The apology statement was ready for review. Dates were set for the first training session and the inaugural Innovatic event at the restaurant. As Monique turned to leave, Miss Carter called out, "Before you go today at lunch, your team is welcome here. Please enjoy the table you reserved." Monique paused in the doorway. She turned back with a bright smile. "Thank you. I look forward to it." Then she stepped out into the hallway. Back in the main dining room, diners still enjoyed their meals. Monique crossed the polished floor and exited the way she had come in, this time as a respected partner rather than a dismissed guest. Outside, her assistant Leo waited by a sleek black car. He opened the door, and Monique slid into the back seat. She pulled out her phone and saw a dozen new messages, praise from her team, excited notes from social media followers, and several emails from local journalists praising the constructive resolution. As the car pulled away, Monique looked back at the restaurant's glowing sign. Felt different now, less like a barrier and more like a place ready for change. She turned to Leo. "Let's head back to the office. We have events to plan." In the days that followed, the plan unfolded smoothly. The restaurant published the apology at the top of its homepage and on social media, thanking Monique for her guidance. Staff attended bias awareness workshops, where they learned to recognize assumptions and treat every guest with equal respect. Innovatech and Restaurant Looks co-hosted a networking event for diverse entrepreneurs, drawing a crowd of community members eager to connect. The donation check was presented at the event's opening, symbolizing a new bond between business and social responsibility. Monique attended each session, offering encouragement and sharing her own journey as a leader who had faced and overcome bias. She saw restaurant staff engaging with the lessons, asking questions, and practicing new approaches. She watched as Ms. Carter stood beside her at the networking event, introducing Monique to guests as not only a valued patron but as a partner and friend by the end of the week. The story of Monique's calm resolve and the restaurant's transformation had spread across local media. One feature article described how a simple act of dignity had led to lasting change in a beloved restaurant. Social media posts celebrated the power of respectful dialogue and highlighted the joint initiatives between Innovatech and Restaurant Looks. Monique's initial setback had become a shining example of leadership, empathy, and community progress. Late on Friday afternoon, Monique returned to the cafe across the street. She ordered a coffee and sat at the same corner table where she and her team had first regrouped. She pulled out her notebook and wrote a final note. "Today I feel proud not just of our work at Innovatech, but of our ability to turn challenges into opportunities. May this be a model for others." She closed the notebook and looked up at the restaurant window across the street, where the words "everyone deserves respect" still lingered in the minds of many who had seen her dash up. Monique smiled too. Herself, she had walked away once. Then she had stood her ground with calm dignity, engaged in thoughtful dialogue, and built a bridge across a moment of conflict. In doing so, she had shown that true leadership is not just about power or success, but about lifting others up and creating change, one respectful conversation at a time. The morning sun filtered through Monique's office window as she settled into her chair and looked out at the quiet street below. It had been a week since her meeting with Ms. Carter, and change was already unfolding. She reached for her cup of tea and thought back to the moment when the apology went live on Restaurant Looks' website. She remembered the relief she felt seeing those words simple, honest, and full of promise. Today, she would visit the restaurant again, not as a guest in conflict, but as a partner celebrating progress. Monique arrived just before noon. The restaurant's new sign near the entrance read, "Welcome, everyone deserves respect," a line she had suggested. She paused for a moment to take it in, then she stepped inside through the front door. The hostess greeted her with a genuine smile that felt warm and sincere. No tightness in her shoulders, no uneasy glance, just a true welcome. Monique nodded and made her way past tables where diners chatted and laughed. Enjoying their meals in the bright midday light, she found Ms. Carter waiting at a corner table, 2 plates of colorful salads and grilled vegetables laid out on gleaming white china. Ms. Carter stood and motioned for Monique to sit. "I'm so glad you're here," she said, her eyes lighting up. Monique returned the gesture. "Thank you. It feels right to share this meal together." They sat, and for a moment neither spoke, just enjoying the calm atmosphere and the soft bustle of servers moving through the room. They began to talk about more than the incident. Ms. Carter shared how her team had completed the bias awareness training. She described lively discussions around the tables, moments of surprise, when staff recognized their own assumptions, and times when they practiced better ways to greet and seat guests. Monique listened, pleased to hear the details. She thought of her own company's trainings on leadership and teamwork, and how real growth came from honest conversation and practice. Monique asked about the new reservation system. Ms. Carter explained that her tech team had added a color-coded alert for confirmed bookings. Now, when a reservation came in for more than 6 people, the hostess tablet displayed a gold star next to the name. Additionally, they had placed a small printout of all daily bookings by the host's station as a double check. "It's small," Ms. Carter said, "but I think it makes a big difference." Monique smiled. "Small steps often lead to lasting change," she said. As they ate, they talked about the community event Innovatech and Restaurant Looks had co-hosted. More than 100 people had attended the networking night, from young entrepreneurs just starting out to veterans of local business. Monique described how she had watched groups form around shared interests: technology, wellness, the arts, and how the restaurant staff had mingled naturally, serving hors d'oeuvres and inviting feedback from guests. Ms. Carter nodded, recalling that night as one of her proudest moments. "I saw my team light up," she said. "They wanted to learn, to connect. They saw that respect works both ways." Monique shared stories from her office, too. She told how her own team had felt energized by the public show of support. They had jokes now about the Gold Star reservation, and they felt even more united by the experience. She spoke of a young intern who said she had never thought she could change a restaurant's policy. Yet there it was, a living example that one person's calm determination could ripple out to touch many lives. Ms. Carter listened, eyes bright, clearly moved. After lunch, Monique and Ms. Carter stood to leave. Before stepping through the door, Ms. Carter pressed a hand to Monique's arm. "Thank you," she said softly. "Not just for what you did for me, but for showing me how to lead with heart." Monique felt a warmth spread through her. "Thank you, Ms. Carter," she replied. "Yes. You showed me how to listen and respond with courage." They embraced briefly, 2 leaders acknowledging each other's strengths. Outside, Monique paused for one last look at the restaurant. The early afternoon light made the sign glow softly. Through the window, she could see diners enjoying their meals in an atmosphere of genuine welcome. She realized how far things had come in just a week. What began as a humiliating moment had become a turning point for an entire team, a company, and a community. Monique felt proud not only of her own resolve, but of the way she and Ms. Carter had turned conflict into connection. Back at Innovatech headquarters that afternoon, Monique gathered her team in the small lounge that overlooked the city's skyline. They sat in a circle, smiles on their faces, energy in the air. She told them about the lunch, about the heartfelt words from Ms. Carter, and about how the restaurant's new policies were already making a difference. She spoke of the networking event, the stories shared by community members, and the new friendships that had formed across a single table. Her team listened, eyes shining, and they applauded, not just for Monique, but for everyone involved in the process. Monique stood in the center of the circle and said, "This experience taught me that leadership is about more than decisions and profits. It's about listening, walking away when needed, speaking up when needed, and finding a way forward together. It's about respect." She looked at each person around her. "Thank you for believing in this vision. Together, we've shown that change can happen gently, thoughtfully, and with real impact." That evening, Monique sat alone on the balcony of her apartment, a soft breeze carrying the sounds of the city below. She thought of Miss Carter, her team, the people at the pop-up kiosk, the diners now at ease and restaurant looks, she thought. Of her journey from an apartment office to a company that meant more than technology, but community. She felt a deep sense of fulfillment. The world was imperfect, she knew. Yes. But moments like these showed her that kindness and calm resolve could make it a little better. She opened her laptop and drafted a brief note for her personal blog, a reflection on respect, leadership, and the power of listening. She wrote about her own fears when stepping out of the restaurant the first time, and her hope as she stepped back in to celebrate progress. She closed her eyes and felt gratitude for every person who had stood with her. Then she clicked publish. As the post went live, Monique watched the first few comments appear, inspiring. "Well done. Thank you for sharing your journey." She smiled and closed the laptop, ready to rest. In her heart, she knew that the story would continue to unfold, new events to plan, new challenges to face, and always the chance to lead with dignity. She stood, looked out at the night sky, and whispered to herself, "Onward." And with that simple word, she stepped back inside, prepared for whatever came next.